Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to episode 2. Attention, Lisa Jones. Are you in the building? Where you at, Lisa Jones? We're missing one of our co-hosts. Last week it was like 15 below in Minnesota, so she was not here because her power was out. Hopefully today she'll be with us soon. But I got to put up the bat light. Lisa Jones, Lisa Jones, where you at? If you missed us last week, our premiere episode of rounding the job search bases, let me just catch you up real quickly. This is a show all about the job search from 4 different perspectives. We have Shiela Jones, who is a coach who can help you with your specific job search wherever you are. Lisa Jones, they're not sisters, not related, but they have the same last name. Lisa Jones is a resume writing and a CV writing professional. She does this for a living. Kelly Robinson is the owner of PKR, which is a recruiting firm. It's a unique. We always are excited to tell you how, but she demonstrates it in and day out. I just watched her last night or yesterday afternoon with my friend Damon Pistolka, and if you missed that, go back and watch it. It's amazing because she went into detail about how PKR helps and what makes them unique. I loved that episode. And then, of course, there's me. I'm the owner of Project Help You Grow. If you haven't heard of that, it is a website. Some people call it a job board. Really, the goal, it's a philanthropy. What does that mean? Everything's free on it. It's free service. Launched it back in 2018. Been running for 5 years now. Can you believe it, Kelly? It's been 5 years.
That's
Anyways,
amazing.
what do we do? We're trying to educate job seekers, but our main goal is to connect like a bridge job seekers to employers and recruiters like Kelly to help put the 2 groups together so that you can get placed faster. The idea of the show is simple. You ask a question, you're going to get 4 different answers from 4 different perspectives, and there's 4 bases in baseball. So just kind of cute. We decided to call the show Rounding the Job Search Bases, and that's what this show is about. Now, today you can hit a triple until Lisa gets here and you can get that home run. But a triple is still pretty darn good, so we will take it. If you have a question already in mind, you do not have to wait for us to say, okay, we're ready for your questions. Go ahead and drop them in. What do we do here? We try to do first in, first out. So if you ask the question first, when we get to time for the questions, we will take your question first. To the best of my ability, I do make mistakes every once in a while, and I apologize. If I miss your question and I'm asking a question that was asked after yours, go ahead and put it back in, but let me know, like, hey, I asked this above, but you missed it, and I'll bump you to the top of the pile. All right, so we've got Cynthia and Akbar and Laura and Akbar again. Thank you. He's excited to be here. I love it. We got this lady, Kelly Robinson. I don't know. She doesn't wear glasses, so
Right.
she must be different than the Kelly Robinson on our stage. Imran and Rakula. Good morning, everybody, wherever you're from. This is amazing. We are not just catering to people in the United States. We will address you from wherever you are. In full disclosure, all of us happen to be from the United States. But one thing that I loved about Project Help You Grow from the moment I launched it is it was a global endeavor. And one of the reasons why I picked Lisa Jones to be on the show, ladies, not just because she writes resumes, but also because she is certified in writing CVs, which many of our people in the audience need help with CVs specifically, not just resumes. So there we go. So we've got a question already. How can I find a job outside of my country? I'm an expert. Well, that's good because I'll start with this. Here's my friend Brian. I'm actually on a show with him right after this one's over. So that'll be fun in our truth community. Let's start with this question. I think it's a great question because I don't know about you, Sheila and Kelly, but I get this question daily. Daily, I get this question. So instead of having me go first, because I always answer this question, I feel like, let's go. Last time we went Sheila, then Kelly. Today we're going to mix it up. We're going to go Kelly, then Sheila, just to kind of, I like to keep things fair if you guys haven't been able to tell that yet. So let me do this. I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to drop this for now. because I feel like the top of my head's getting chopped off, right? Um, Kelly, go ahead and start. How can he find a job outside of his country, assuming he's an expert in whatever it is he does? It would be nice to have a little bit more detail there. Like if you
Yeah.
guys want to ask a specific question, like it's good to give us like more information. So I've been in the field for X amount of time, and this is the field I'm looking to, to work in. And if you have a specific area in mind, that is helpful, which we'll get to when at least if not before, we'll get to it when I answer the question because this is a very important piece of information for me. But Kelly, we'll let you start. We're gonna try to keep the answers to like 60 seconds or so each. Now
Yeah.
we got time to get to more.
I mean, I would say I would want to understand more. What does he mean outside of the country? Does he want to move? Is he looking to work remotely? Because there's a ton of that happening right now.
Yeah.
And there are two different ways to work, right? One is a lot more work to get here to the US, find work. And the other is a little bit easier as long as you're set up to pay and get paid. So I'm always thinking from the employer side, right? So I have employees in other countries and I have to set them up. Sorry, did you hear that feedback?
Yeah. It's usually if you have the show on in the background, you gotta mute it.
I have it on, but it's like way down.
Yeah,
It's
anything not on StreamYard, you gotta just hit the mute button. It's good for reading the comments and responding, so we all do it. But
that's why I had it on.
it's like the old days of calling in the radio station. The first thing the DJ would say is turn your radio down.
Yes, that's the first thing that I did, but I don't know why. All right, let's try this again.
Okay, so he's talking about to thank you for following up here because this is going to shape
great.
our answer. So you want to move and live in that country. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the first things that you need to do is make sure that you understand what that country would look for in your skill set, I would think, right? So, you want to understand what skill set that you have that you feel like you're an expert in is transferable to industry in whatever country it is that you're looking for. The other thing is, there's all kinds of visa things that you need to look into too. I'm not a visa person. Maybe someone else can help with that, but that's a huge hurdle.
I do have a lead on that on Project Help You Grow.
Oh, that's great because that's not my.
Yeah,
that's
he's
not
in New
my,
York. It's a law firm in New York. This is all they do.
Wow, that's great because you have to have that, and that could be difficult.
I get asked this question every day, and I'm not a lawyer either, so I'm like, I gotta find somebody who can help these folks. So I did.
Yeah, it's too much. It's a lot. It's very intense, right? And it depends on what country you're coming from and what country you're going to and that kind of thing. So there's a lot, and it could be a really long process. So that's probably something you want to think about first, after you would research and make sure that your skills are transferable to something in the other country that you're looking to get into.
100%. All right, Sheila, what do you got to add to that? That was very good.
I think it goes through my mind all the time when we talk about living in country A, B, or C. What I try to tell people is, first off, identify the companies that have a global footprint. Because if you go to a really small company and you're trying to get this global transition occurring, they're not going to have the power, the wheelhouse, the expertise to help you with that. So if you go to a country like I've done a lot of work in the food business. So when people say they want to live in a different country, I point them to companies that are global already. They understand the visa challenges. They understand the support that's needed. They understand the timing that's connected. Just like what Kelly was saying is how you pay, how you get paid. Start with the basis of those particular companies that are in your wheelhouse. They have global presence. They potentially have an on-site location in those countries, or they're used to having expat responsibilities and being able to manage that expat process. Is that helpful?
I think it is.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to take you guys in just a second to a blog article that I wrote. I just have to find it because it's been a minute. Juliana Robbie is, in my opinion, probably one of the best people to talk to on this particular topic when you're looking for somebody who isn't a lawyer. And here's why. She has been on both sides of this. She has helped people from the recruiter side, and she's been the one to do it herself she was working in HR and switched sides of the table. But she has been somebody in here. Let me share my screen, which I didn't have set up. Sorry about that, guys. I will do better at this eventually. We're still working out the kinks on this particular show. So here we go. All right. This is an article that I wrote, and we have another question. Same question, please. How can I get a matter jobs opportunity outside of my country? Look, I'm telling you, I get this question every single day. All right. So here's an article that I wrote back in 2019, but the information in it is still very much valid. So here are some things, right? Tips we cover in this interview. It was an interview. This was a blog, is a summary of the interview that I did with Juliana Robbie, and you can watch the full interview over here on podcasts. Okay. But where it is being flexible, taking a step back. So let's say you're used to being mid-level manager. You might go in as an overqualified candidate to make yourself help step above the herd is the idea. Applying at multinational companies, this is something Sheila just talked about. But one of the ideas that you can do to incorporate this, and we talk about it in the article, is apply for a job at a company that has a location inside your country, and also a location at the country that you want to move to. Now, instead of someone hiring you out of the blind, they can be an intercompany transfer. It's a
Yeah, that's
lot easier. That's one of the strategies that Juliana Robbie taught me that I was just like, whoa, that makes way too much sense, because they're more likely to sponsor you than a company who you've never worked for. Okay. So networking, this is a huge one. Too many of you, when you're looking for a job in another country, it's kind of like a dream. There's not much of a plan there, right? So there's no strategies, like a wish. Well, one of the ways that you can make it go from a wish to a strategy is to actually start working on who you know, not just a dream of, oh, I think Canada would be an amazing place to go because I know that they sponsor folks for Canada relatively easier than they do in the United States. So all these people from wherever they are, could be India or the Mid East or from Africa, who frankly have never seen snow, think that it would be this great idea to go live in a place where it never stops snowing. And I'm like, be careful what you wish for, because sometimes you get it and then you're miserable. But if you actually can go visit the place, and not even visit the place, not even visit, excuse me, I hit the wrong one. Not even visit the place like a visitor would visit. So I'm not talking about going and staying in a hotel and eating at the fancy restaurants and going to see all the museums and the shows and doing it like that. Like, no, go do an Airbnb in a neighborhood like you would be able to afford if you did get that job you're trying for, and figure out where the schools are, figure out the commute if you're going to work on location, like Kelly was talking about, because now you can work remotely. But most of you are talking about wanting to work in person. So try to mimic as much as you can the life that you would have while you're there. And then that'll give you an idea. And don't go in tourist season. Go in the worst part of the year, whether that be like, look, if I was going to consider moving to Dubai, I would want to go there in the hottest part of the year. Why? Because that's the hardest part, the most extreme. And if I can handle it in its worst, then certainly I can handle it in its best. But if I go and I explore an area and only see the best it has to offer, of course, it's easy to fall in love when you're looking at only the best qualities. But what about the everyday qualities and the not so good qualities? Because every area has an underbelly, every area has some natural weather conditions that are extreme, that are hard to deal with. And frankly, if you're paying attention, it seems like it might be getting a little worse these days. Not to get off topic, but it seems to be the hard stuff. Like, I live in Southern California, and right now, if you come here in the summers, it's really, really hot, and it's hot for 100+ straight days. So, if you're not comfortable with the heat, this might not be the place for you. Right. So those are just some ideas. I could go into a lot more, but the biggest suggestion I would have for you guys is it can't, at some point, it has to go from a dream to a strategy. There has to be a plan. And part of that plan has to be narrowing down the location and coming to terms with the reality of that particular area. I think too many people, it's kind of like when I wish upon a star, somebody's going to magically hire me. You might be in an industry. Kelly's very first point. What does the market need? I talk about that all the time. And the market might not need what you do. So there's either no demand or there's a ready-made supply. I will tell you this, from anybody who's had to hire somebody before, you are never going to sponsor and bring somebody in from another culture. Forget about the logistics, just the culture fit. You're never going to bring somebody in from another culture when you can hire somebody who already is from the existing culture and proven that they can work in that culture. So if you're looking for one employee to do XYZ, whatever the job is, IT work, marketing, recruiting, HR, sales, you name it, whatever it is, if I can readily go outside and the labor pool has plenty of options for me locally, I'm not going to bring in outside talent. Why? Because you might not fit. The language barrier, the religious barrier, the cultural barrier, all of it might make you miserable and you didn't anticipate it. You were so excited about it, but when you got there, you realized the reality didn't match the dream. And so now you want to go back to where you're more comfortable. And how expensive was that for the company? They sponsored you. They're paying for all the normal onboarding too, which Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe is a year basically. So it costs about a year's salary to the company above and beyond what they're paying you to onboard you with the training, the not lost, but lack of production. You're not going to be as productive in that first year as you ramp up, right? So there's a lot of considerations. And for somebody to come in and fizzle out, it's a higher risk of fizzling. That's what I'm saying. So they're always going to, but if you can identify an area in the world that's short on the talent that you're looking for, like nursing in the United States, for example, was really, really short for a while. I think it's caught up, but for a while there was a big deficit. So if you were in the nursing industry, you could pretty much write your ticket in the United States. Now, again, I don't think that's true anymore, but it's a supply and demand. It's like economics. Think of it from that standpoint.
It is
All right.
true.
I think we've covered this topic pretty well. So we're going to move on. If you have any questions about resumes, about interview strategies, about how to negotiate for your salary that you want, or how to make sure when they don't post salary requirements on the job listing, job description, which many people don't, how can you tell how much they're making? You can ask us anything like any of that, right? So while we're waiting for questions to come in, Sheila wanted to talk about job descriptions. So we're going to have these segments where we let the expert educate us for about 5 minutes on a topic. And then the panel will do a little bit from my perspective, this is what I see. And then we'll open it up to questions. So Sheila, please go ahead and give us an education on job descriptions.
I think the first thing that always goes through my mind when I'm interacting with a client is, have you read the job description? And they always say yes. And then I say, well, what's the top line? What's the first bullet point in that job description? And they can't answer the question at all. And so what it leads me to is it's a brush over, quick rush review of the job description. So coming from the perspective of, I've written a lot of job descriptions, think as a person that's seeking a job, think about the person in the company that has written that job description, the time, energy, effort that they put into writing it, identifying the bullet points and how those bullet points effectively execute within the company. That's my biggest message to people is these job descriptions are not just written. Well, I would say that hopefully they're not written in a quick, hasty method. They're seeking a person that has this skill set. Then when I say to people, okay, now that you've got this job description, I want you to really think through what is occurring every single day in that seat. Put yourself in the company, put yourself at the desk, and envision that you're walking in on Monday morning and this is the job description. What does that look like as it executes through the week, as it looks like it executes through the month or even a couple years? And then I take the person all the way back up to what is the company and what does the company do? So just a couple of days ago, I was helping a young gentleman. He's applying for Comcast. Now, Comcast is a streaming entertainment cable company located on the East Coast. Well, just after 5 minutes of interacting with them, we found out that Comcast is a global company. They sell their services in 40 states. So now you've got the global complexity, you've got the state-to-state situation that's going with this material. Now he's got this job description. Now, if you know the company's global, you know they're in multiple states, now you can seat yourself in the mindset of, okay, how was my job going to roll out on a day-to-day basis? And then matching your skill set specifically to that job description, taking that piece and then rolling it into how you formulate your questions and how you answer the questions that are being asked in the interview process. If you don't do that, if you don't look at the job description and map it all together, you're going to go in, let's just use the baseball terminology, with a strike or maybe even 2 strikes before you even get in the batter's box. So that's my passion for job descriptions.
Awesome. Kelly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she set us up pretty well there. What would you want to add to that?
I love the way that you're talking about job descriptions, especially from like a job seeker's perspective, because if they can understand not only what's in front of them, but the bigger picture, it helps them as an interviewer and also helps to know if they're going to be passionate about the job.
Yeah.
You have to tie what you're doing to the big picture. You have to understand how your position will affect that company or your department or your, whatever it may be, the location. Lots of jobs there. Thanks, Ira. That's
You're
nice.
welcome. Look, so when you guys are looking for a job, what she was talking about is like, read this thing.
Right.
Don't just like quick glance and go, oh, I got it. Because
and this
I will tell you the same thing. Like the information on here, part of the reason why you're not getting a response is because you're not really reading it and you're not addressing this.
Yeah.
And not only on your cover letter, which, that's a good question. Let's come back to that. Cover letters required or not, right? But you're not meeting the qualifications as much as they're requiring. And when the market's hot, of course they're going to get people that they're overqualified. They're probably not going to be considering people who are stretch jobs, right? In an economy where there's a large labor pool. When economy
100%.
Yeah, when the economy is short on labor, right? When unemployment rate is 2%, 3%, 4%, usually the market favors the job seeker, right? It's like a buyer or a seller's market in real estate. In this particular market, Kelly, what do you think right now? Are we? Because I've heard different answers on this, and it'd be interesting because we have not talked about this at all. What do you think right now? Is it a job seeker's market or is it an employer's market? Because it's been an employer's market for a while, but the tables do seem like they're shifting.
I think it's shifting, right? So there's a couple things happening. I guess it depends on what perspective you're looking at it for. But job seekers were in demand, the good ones anyway, for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So it was really their market. The employers were in a rush to hire and cut corners and overpay and all kinds of stuff. And I talked to Damon about this last night a little bit, but so I think it's going to shift. I think we're seeing layoffs. I think we're going to see more of that. And I think people are going to realize they're paying a premium for people that don't have the skill at the level they need because they had to hire them. So there's going to be a shift. And I think that's the employer, becoming in control. We're going to have all these I posted a job for a tech recruiter on Facebook, 2 weeks ago. The amount of tech recruiters that I got and good tech recruiters that I got was crazy. You don't normally get that many. And they're normally very what's the rate? They're but they're all being let go. There's a lot of them available now. And so that's a sign for me. When I look at that, I'm like, okay, that's a sign.
What do you think about that, Shiela?
It's interesting, the shift. I can tell you that prior to the pandemic, I know the companies that I work with, they were paying X amount of dollars. And then during the pandemic, the wage they increased considerably because it was a supply and demand issue. And just like Kelly's saying, is some people that were coming in and they had, I'll just call it minimal skill set, and they were placed in the job to help fit the needs of the business. Well, as this is recovering and as there's more available people in the market, there is probably going to be a shift with moving the lesser skilled employee out and the higher skilled employee in so that the business can maximize the performance over time. And I know that I'll just give you an example. We were paying double the rate for a mechanic or electrical technicians for business. And now it's like, hey, if there's a lot of people out there, we might, there might be a shift in the industry where layoffs occur so you can get better skilled employees in for a percentage of decrease in pay. So I think there's a little bit of concern around that because people don't want to go backwards, right? So I think like being able to move it up a little bit as a skill set. But I really feel like sometimes it's the story that you're able to craft and your value as you craft that message out that helps you secure the wages that you need for living your life.
I think what's interesting to me about this, and Kelly, you touched on this yesterday in your interview with Damon too. It was really well done. If you guys haven't seen it, I do recommend you go back and watch that episode. But here's the thing. There were people who had less experience when supply was low and demand was high, who could command these bonuses, these basically signing bonuses, or they were getting extra benefits that weren't standard, but it's like, hey, if you want me, this is what it takes. I need, 5 weeks of vacation right out of the gate, which is, not typical, or, $80,000 salary over what they normally would pay. You have people that were employed by the company going, man, I should just quit and get rehired. I can make twice as much money staying at the same company just by renewing my contract. Right. But those people, I think, are the ones that are the first now out the door. Kelly actually talked about this, which was interesting. I hadn't thought about it, Kelly. This was something, again, just an epiphany by listening to you talk to Damon. Returning to the office is one of it's like the company's response to quiet quitting in a sense. It's a way to quietly lay off some folks without officially having layoffs. And what do you mean by that? Well, if you hired somebody with the intention that they were going to be fully remote and they don't want to, let's say they live in Philadelphia and your office is in LA. Well, to work from the office, they would have to relocate. And they're likely not going to do that. You can recall people and say, hey, now we have half-time requirements or full-time requirements, and they can't satisfy that. I'm sorry, but I guess you're going to have to resign because this is the new policy. So it is interesting that that's happening and they're not officially called layoffs. Something else I noticed in January, the jobs report, layoffs are the thing making the headlines, of course. These tech companies laying off in droves. But the jobs actually added, United States jobs. We had a surplus or a gain of 500,000. So it's interesting that you have to look inside the numbers, because if you work in the tech space, obviously right now it's a volatile market, but there are other markets that are doing better. So again, when you look at the whole picture, you think the sky's falling, but it's actually still net adding. Unemployment rate is falling, although I think it only went down by 1/10 of 1%, something like that. So it wasn't a huge gain, but it was. I think many of us were expecting a net loss there. A drop. I was.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting. I did ask a question earlier when we were talking about job descriptions that I want to come back to, because I get this a lot. But before we answer that question, I always want to put the guests first. And this is a great question. Do companies give priority to internal or external employees? Now, internal employees, for those of you who are not familiar with that, are people that work inside the company already. External employees would be people that work that maybe are either not working for the company, depending on how you want to look at this. They could be 1099. Those are external. They're not technically employees. Those are vendors, but a lot of people call them external employees. So are you talking 1099, or are you talking people that are applying for a job like a fresh face. And that is interesting. I have my thought, but I want to start with Kelly. Then we'll go to Shiela. And Kelly, I'm going to do this. I'm going to swap spots with you. There we go.
Yeah, it's oh wow.
Fancy, right?
Oh, I feel really special. Yeah.
Well, I didn't want the thing to cover your face, so.
Oh, I did. Here's what I'll say. When we work with our client partners that are companies that are like above 50, there are certain laws where they have to look at internal candidates first. So I don't know if it's that they're giving necessarily a preference. I think it's whoever is the right fit for the position, and it also depends on their culture. If they really kind of invest in their internal employees, even if it may not be the right match, they might bring them in. External, I would say most companies, it depends on the size, but most are looking externally after they look internally. So I just think it also, it depends on what their policy is. Is it like we have to look internally for 7 days and interview, and culture, I think, makes a huge impact on this question, because some people are not willing to invest in internal, kind of like growing people, and some are. So sorry. And I don't strict towards foreigners. I think that's the same as Ira was saying. Like if there is someone here that is, capable of doing the position, they're not going to take, most of my clients would not take the extra step. It's got to be something really in demand, like Python, right? Huge in demand. So that's something we sponsor. We would move people around for my clients. But if it's someone here, they're not going to, because it's the additional cost.
Yeah, and risk, right? You guys,
big risk.
A lot of job seekers are thinking like the job seeker, right? They're not thinking like the employer. Like I use this analogy. Let's say you wanted some bread to make some sandwiches for just an everyday lunch at your house, and your significant other goes to you and says, "Hey, honey, can you get some bread for this sandwich?" And there are 1,000 different stores in your city you could go to, right? Would you go to one of those stores to pick up the bread, or would you hop on a plane, go around the world to Paris, pick up some of the fancy bread in Paris, right? Ooh la la, and fly back home to make that sandwich? Because that is the equivalent of what we're talking about here. There's a lot of added expense and stuff that has to happen. And does the bread go bad on the way back? And anyways, it can make the analogy with mold. Here's the bottom line. When it comes to foreign, some things it makes sense. Kelly just said Python development, right? It's a coder. They're hard to come by. Okay. So if you're in a market, let's say you're in Cleveland, Ohio, or actually let's go to Columbus, Ohio, right? Because that's a tech spot. So you're in Columbus, Ohio, and you need a Python developer. And in the market, there's nobody who will be a Python developer. Let's say you want to pay $35 an hour. And the only people that will even apply for your job are commanding a salary more like $80 or $90 an hour. But you got this guy in, let's say, South Africa or Nigeria, okay, West Africa. So the guy's in Nigeria. He's got 10 years of Python experience. He's willing to move to Columbus, Ohio, and do the job that you're requiring for that $35 an hour salary. Now you got something, because economically it's worth the risk between the $35 an hour and the $90 an hour salary. See what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to. Job seekers don't typically think like that, but that's the way business owners think. It is a business transaction. It's not personal. It isn't that we're it's not that they're anti-foreigner. Most of us and what makes the United States interesting is most of us cling to this foreign heritage. You ask somebody what they are, and they won't tell you they're American. They'll tell you they're Irish, German, or they're, whatever they are, right? Like, where does your family come from? I'm a mutt, so I'm American. But most people do that. We're not anti-foreign here. We're just, pro money. That's capitalism. We like profit. So if you can readily, like I said, think about the bread. If you could go out the street and hit a grocery store or a convenience store, that's easy and affordable, why would you fly halfway across the world to import some bread to make an everyday sandwich? Now, if you were hosting, a foreign dignitary or the CEO of a major company, maybe now importing that bread from Paris makes sense. So I'm not saying it never happens. I'm just saying it's not common. And those are some of the reasons. Hopefully that analogy is helpful.
Yeah.
All right. So I asked a question about cover letters, which I really want to talk about because there's many different ways to look at cover letters as an advantage or as a disadvantage. So here's the question. A cover letter is a good idea. I'm prefacing it with the fact that it's not stipulated as a requirement by the job description. Because if the job description says include a cover letter, then by all means, you better include that cover letter, right? To Sheila's point earlier, read the dang job description. Because if they tell you to send the resume in Word, then send it in Word, not PDF. Why are they doing that? Probably because their ATS doesn't work well with PDFs in that case, right? If they tell you to apply on their company website, not on ZipRecruiter or whatever other Project Help You Grow, whatever job board you're on, then go ahead and follow the directions, because part of what they're looking at, believe it or not, is how well you follow directions. So assuming they don't specify cover letter required, are you, and let's say, okay, we could talk about this in your answer if you want, but the different job levels, C level, mid-management level, blue collar, everyday employee level. So if you want to specify, go ahead. But cover letters, what do you think? Kelly, you're up. Now, Kelly cheated and gave us her answer in the comments. So I'm not going to show that just because I'm going to let you talk, but she did type that out too.
I'm not a fan of cover letters. I would say if the position is a high demand position, I think you're going to build your network around and try to kind of infiltrate into the company. And I think that's when it's a good idea.
We should explain that. Can we hit the pause button and explain that? Because that, as a sidebar, is a brilliant strategy. Actually, you know what? Let's table that. We'll come back to that as a topic. That's a brilliant strategy. All right.
Okay. So when it's a higher demand position or a higher level, that's when you really want to try to differentiate yourself. And so depending on that level, if I see a cover letter, I will read it. And if it's catered, if I can tell it's not a template and it's truly catered to the position, that's someone I want to look at. I would never require it because I'm just not a fan for everything, but there are certain positions, and if they're in demand, that's the way for them to differentiate themselves.
Yeah, no doubt. I forgot to do this. I meant to do this earlier. Hang on a second, guys. I'm trying to get fancy here. So Kelly, in case you guys are not familiar with her, again, we talk about it at the beginning of the show. She runs a recruiting firm. So this is the website. It's panaknows.com. Panaknows, sorry. I'll get it right eventually. I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. Get your bread from panaknows.com. There you go. And I like that answer. I'm gonna talk about that in my answer in a second. But Sheila is a coach. Okay, and wrong one. Sorry. That's the resumes. This is Sheila, wickedresults.com, because she's from Boston and everything awesome. So there we go. Wicked Results. So Sheila, go ahead. Tell us what you think here on this cover letter strategy. From a coach's perspective, the recruiter said, not so much.
Yeah, I think the question is, why is the company asking you for that? Like, if you could
in this case, they're not. So in the premise of this particular question, they didn't say it's required. So would you recommend the job seeker go the extra mile because it takes effort to write one? All right. So is it worth the time?
So let's take the cover letter off the table. And going back to what Kelly said, stand out. So if you're in a space, an opportunity to stand out, then stand out. Like this morning, I was talking with a person and I was saying, you have all this experience and knowledge. He asked this question, should I create a cover letter? And I said, I think you need to build out your YouTube channel. I think you need to build a portfolio. I think you need to show your creativity digitally and be available from that space. Now, in that process of this cover letter, sometimes people highlight these things, but in this space for me, I don't want a cover letter. And the reason I don't want the cover letter is because I am going to look at your resume. I'm going to read your resume and I'm going to place it right up against what my job description is. And I'm going to make some calculated assessment on whether or not your skill set is appropriate for the job. And I would rather a person be very demonstrative of their successes, whether it be on social media or YouTube channel or something along those lines, create a nice portfolio and be able to bring that content in, because I can tell you there's a lot of different skill sets that each job has in addition to the ones that are posted, right? So I'm not a fan of the cover letter. I can read your job. I can read the job description. I can read the resume. I can make a summary of who you are pretty quickly after I've read all that content. In addition to that, at the top of your resume gives you a lot of space for you to give a nice summary of yourself in an effective way. And if you're struggling with that type of communication, find someone to help you construct that communication effectively so that you can really knock it out of the park in the top 5 lines of your resume.
Yeah, if you need resume help, I know she's not here, but our other host, that
Yes.
is exactly what she does, and I would have loved to gotten her opinion on this too.
Yeah.
I'll give you mine. Mine, okay, I'm like, if this is the Supreme Court, I'm on the minority. I'm writing the minority side, right? They usually have an opinion come out from the majority and the minority. I'd be writing the minority opinion here. The reason why I like cover letters, and the only way I like cover letters is if you do what Kelly said, and that's you tailor the resume. Again, I keep going back to my blogs because I write articles on all of this stuff. And I wrote an article. It's been a minute. Here we go. Cover letter strategy. So I wrote this article, cover letter strategy, and in it, I even have a video, one of those fancy YouTube videos to stand out that Sheila was talking about. And I don't disagree with anything that Sheila said or Kelly. Frankly, I think they're very smart people, and I might actually evolve my opinion based on what they said a little bit. But this is what I'm suggesting that you do in the cover letter. There isn't a standardized, like, too many of you are missing the job because you have a standard resume. You're not tailoring it for each job submission, and you have a standard cover letter, and you're not revising it for each job. And that's reason why you're not getting hired, in my opinion, or even interviewed in most cases, because you're not making the cut.
Resume.
But if you will talk to them about why you want to work for the company, specifically them, how you would specifically feel the role, and then tie it all up so it's not long-winded. I think that that can be a major help because, correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but part of the goal here when you're hiring, getting in the mindset of the person that's doing the interview, the person who's going to make the hiring decision. One of the things that you're always curious is, okay, are they actually excited to work for me? And why are they really excited if they are? Because it's expensive, to Kelly's point earlier, the onboarding process and the cost of bringing them in, whether they're foreign or domestic. You like how I did that, right? So whether they're, local or from not even foreign from the same, when we talk about foreign in this show, a lot of times we're talking about outside the country. They might be like a transplant from Los Angeles. You know what I mean? Are they really going to want to live in Philadelphia when, it's January and it's the frozen tundra? You see those guys playing the football game and the breath comes out, like, that's nightmare for me. You know what I mean?
But
But
they still win.
yeah, are they going to get along all this stuff? So let's say I'm not local, or I have a career gap, or I'm transitioning from this job to that job. This happens all the time. In fact, we have a question from David here about that, which we're going to get into in a minute. So, when you're talking about any of those types of things, there's an expression called elephant in the room. I think if you know you're going to get asked a question in an interview and you can address it just even a little bit, in the cover letter, that gives you a huge advantage. Because if Shiela, let's say you've got 25 candidates, that stack that you're evaluating, and you're only going to interview 20, and here's a person that, man, I don't know, but they had a chance to talk to you with that cover letter that the other people gave up and address that question. Now, you're like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to hire him, but I'm at least going to bring him in for the interview. I think that's what a cover letter does. I don't think it gets you a job interview when you're way out of bounds. But I think if you're close to that cut line, it gives you the opportunity to set yourself again ahead. That's why I think it's worth it. But only again, if you take the time to do it right. You're going to be flippant about it, if you're not going to put the time into it, I think it can hurt you, because then it shows, oh, they didn't read the job description. So it's a double-edged sword. If you're going to use it, make sure you use it right. If you want to use it right and you're not sure how to do it, I recommend you come to Project Help You Grow, read this blog. It is called Cover Letter Strategy, because it's a really, really creative title, right? But it says what it is. And it's from my perspective, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. I've never been a recruiter. I've never been a career coach. So there you go. From the guy who runs the job board, the minority position. And by the way, if you're looking for that website, I should have done this earlier too. I'm not great at this yet, guys. I'll get better. Free job search assistance at projecthelpyougrow.com. There you go. All right. So David put in the comments here about transitioning, I believe. Let's just look at it. I'm an IT manager, 20 years experience. I'm most of the time in the legal industry. Thinking about changing careers, I have a lot of skills that are transferable, or soft skills is what we call that, to other industries, but I'm honestly not sure where to begin. Oh my gosh, Shiela, this just seems like you're set for this, but order of operations.
That's right.
Kelly, we're going to go first. I'm going to do something. Yeah, it doesn't work either.
I love that to Shiela. That's her thing. This is her thing.
Yeah, this is where Sheila's specialty is. So Shiela, you go first, and then Kelly and I will give a little extra if we think it's appropriate.
So the first thing I say when a person is trying to transition, and you believe you have
hire Shiela, that's what I say.
Thanks.
I mean, that's why she's here, folks.
But if you're trying to transition from one industry to another industry, I think the first thing you need to understand is, what is that industry you're trying to transfer to? That's first off. And when you decide the industry, now what is the companies? So go at the high level, the industry, the companies, then search these companies out and seek exactly what that transferable skill set is. Let me just explain this. And Ira knows this. So if I get long-winded, Ira, just kick me in the shins here. But
I was going to stop you already, because I was going to interject something like, what if they don't know the industry? But you keep going. We'll get to it.
So I used to be a job coach for a vets group. And you have people in the military who are extremely pointed at their skill set. And I'm just going to use a gentleman. His name is James. He was a sniper. Okay. Like, his job was to kill people in foreign countries. So
they don't hire for that in the United States.
Exactly. Right. So he's like, I'm a sniper. And I'm like, okay, now I've really got to be creative in how I get this out of him. So I'm like, tell me what training you went through. Tell me what the disciplines were that you had to master. Tell me the focus that you had to drive. Tell me the leadership that you had to get under your belt. Tell me about your resistance. Tell me about all of these pieces and parts, not the actual job of being a sniper, but all of the stuff that went in to being a sniper, because that really is the transferable skill set. So in this process of working with him, I was like, okay, a sniper, laser target on what they're trying to do. So that's focus. That's just a ton of stuff in the transferable skill set area. After working with him for a couple of weeks, we were able to craft a really great message about, hey, I was a sniper and my job was to do this. Here's how these background skill sets will be transferred into your company. So when you hire James, this is the kind of guy you're going to get. You're going to get determination. You're going to get disciplined, very focused person. You're going to get a person that can overcome a lot of obstacles. You're going to get a person with determination. You're going to get all this different stuff that bakes into this guy, James. So the point of it is to really craft that message about what your transferable skill sets are. And the case in point was this. I ended up helping him get a job in Oregon working for a medical company. The piece of this was so straight. Here's what he's trying to do. Here's the skill sets that he had. How do you craft that message together to be able to point him directly at that company? Was a home run.
And
Using
you know,
using the job basis.
look, you know that question's coming up in the interview. So part of the coach is going to help you prep for that, right?
Yes.
Like, what is your professional experience? Oh, I was a sniper in the military. Like, first of all, that's badass, but I don't see the correlation. You might, so someone like Sheila, well, let me just say Sheila is perfect for helping you do this, right? Making that transition, David. But the person on the other side of this, you always want to think from the perspective of the person asking the questions, right? Because you've got to get them to see it, right? When they start to nod their head, now
Yep.
you got them, right? But until they're nodding their head, like if they're sitting there like this, you know what I mean? Like you haven't done a good enough job explaining, so you gotta work on this. But you know that stuff's coming. Again, cover letter, you can explain it a little bit, right? And I might even, okay, we did something. We were being kind of funny, and kudos to kudos to our co-host for not reacting when I said sniper for hire is not common in the USA, which was totally tongue in cheek but true. And then Kelly says, unless you have a husband, there you go. All right, a husband that you don't want to keep your husband, I think was her point there, right? But anyways, that interview prep is a big part of this, so that you can you know it's coming. Like, okay, well, for example, how does a guy from the print industry transition to owning a media business, guys? Right? Well, you're talking about the same stuff here with IT, with that tech. I had all kinds of graphic design experience from the print business that translated into creating the media kits that is used in marketing. And then I ran Project Help You Grow from 2018 to 2020, and I didn't have any marketing budget, so I had to learn organic SEO to do that. So when I entered the marketing space, I had a background of design and SEO. And by the way, I had 150,000 followers on LinkedIn, so I was pretty good at this LinkedIn thing. You know what I mean? So I had the ingredients there, the skills to be sufficient, if not proficient, at offering marketing services when I got started. But that was a case that I then had to talk to, not as an employer, but as prospects, right? Companies would reach out to me, go, "Hey, what can you do for us?" And we would talk about what I could do. So the other part of this too, as Sheila would get to if I gave her 5 more minutes on it, is knowing your limitations.
Yep.
It's okay. There's this expression I hate called "fake it till you make it." I am so anti "fake it till you make it." But I was even talking to my wife is a job seeker. Just in full disclosure, she's looking for work, and I said, "It's okay to earn as you learn." So as long as you're upfront with people about what you know and what you don't, your limitations. But, when people ask you, do you know how to do this? And you say no, you can follow it up with yet. I don't know it yet, but I can learn. Right.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing since we're talking
Yeah.
about a sniper, right? I mean, think about that transition. Okay. A sniper in the military trying to get a job in a US company. The tagline that I gave him was very straightforward. Think about what he's trying to do. When he has got the target in his eye,
Yeah. It's in his sight. Yeah.
he is going to hit it. Now, also, what do snipers do? They evaluate when they fire to the left, when they fire to the right, when they miss the target, right? Then they're going to come back and they're going to reset themselves and they're going to move exactly to the target. So his ability to target clients, his ability to target what needed to happen in those client relationships was all from his skill set in being a sniper and taking those moments when he misfired and being in an open mindset to reevaluate and refocus where his target was and be able to hit it. It's really amazing if you can do it.
Cool under pressure for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. We have 3 minutes left in the show, and I've got to go because I've got to jump on another show right at the top of the hour. So I can't go long today. And Kelly's like, perfect, because I got a meeting too. This is the way it works in our worlds. Just 30 seconds, Kelly, on anything that you would like to, follow up with from today's show, or advice for job seekers, and then we'll go to you, Sheila, and then I'll wrap it up.
So one thing I just wanted to, we started to kind of touch on it, but it is really important to build your network, especially in your industry. And we talked about this last week, but I cannot emphasize that enough. Build those relationships. And that's how you get people to know who you are and what you do. But you have to be, you have to be intentional with that. You have to be intentional. You're not just, you're building your connections in certain industries that you're potentially interested in. So your social footprint too, like I think something Sheila had mentioned is just like, have a LinkedIn or have a YouTube channel or something like that. But I really think it's important to know what's out there too, because we do go look, just so you all know.
We'll talk about Alicia next week, but this is an interesting case, Sheila, and I might have her call you, or you, Kelly, if you've got something. But she was a Sensi director for over 5 years. She's really good at sales. She's been working from home, but we need something because of all the medical bills. We need something a little that provides more, like you can count it's going to generate X amount of dollars. So, she doesn't have a college degree. She gave up her career basically to help raise the babies. So that's my fault, right? But anyways, we'll talk about her next week, or if you guys want to reach out and talk to her, I'd let you talk to her directly. You can give her advice. I would really appreciate it. Sheila, go ahead. 30 seconds. Anything you like, my friend.
Well, I would just say I see some comments coming in from intern.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to this. Cloud, I hope I didn't butcher your name. Please come back next week. We'll get into this. This actually is a good strategy, this internship, but you need to make money. There's something that I call fractional work that I would love to talk to you about with this, because it is exactly how I pay my bills to this day. And I did basically what you're doing. So come back. There's hope for you.
Yeah. Okay, good. I just want to make sure that question was.
Yeah. Great question. And I love the detail that she put into it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to just give her 10 seconds. I want to give her the full time.
Yeah. I'll just say this real quick to her is, hey, I wanted a job in construction, 15 years ago to learn some different things. I started a job in which I was not going to get paid. 2 weeks later, I did such a great job, they started paying me. So it all depends on whether you have the backbone once you get into something to navigate and weave yourself in, because they're not going to come to you with a breadbasket. You have got to prove yourself and point yourself into a position that they're going to be attracted to you. So you got to play a little bit of offense and defense while you're coming in. But there's a lot of people that go from free to paid by just their tenacity, what they deliver, and the clarity of what they want from a position, right?
100%. Thank you, ladies, for your amazing wisdom. Look, if you're just joining us now, hit the rewind button and watch, because there's some really valuable information on job descriptions, cover letters, and we talked strategy on in the beginning of the show, how to potentially get a job in a foreign country. I will tell you guys this. One of my good friends, Foster Williams, runs a show out of Dallas, Texas. He's been a recruiter for 40 plus years. They run a show called Who You Know. It's a job show, and he's got a couple other people on the show with him. But amazing the difference it can make when you are building real relationships. Look, these ladies, I didn't meet them in the real world. I met them online. We became friends on LinkedIn, and we became such good friends that I reached out to them personally and said, hey, I'd like to have you on my show. Why? Because I know what they bring. And so when you meet people, it can change everything to that point of, cover letter or no cover letter. Look, if you work in your relationships right, you don't even need to apply for the job, because the person inside the company will refer you to the HR team. Make sure every day you're being kind to people. You're spending a little bit of time encouraging folks, engaging with them where they are on the things that are important to them. If you treat people the way you want to be treated, I promise you, at the end of the day, it's going to go far for you in your whole life, not just when you're looking for a job, but for your whole life. It'll help you out. My name is Ira. Sheila and Kelly are my co-hosts. We're missing Lisa Jones today, but hopefully she'll join us next week. If not, we might have to find a new resume writer to fill the spot. But we'll get your resume right around the show one way or the other, I promise. Join us again next week. We start at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's 8 a.m. Pacific time out here in LA. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for joining us.